Welcome everybody to our council meeting of Tuesday the 19th of November. If we could all please stand for our opening karakia. Tu taua mai runga, tu taua mai raro, tu taua mai roto, tu taua mai waho, kia tau ai te mauritu, te mauriora, kiri te katoa, hauie, huie, hae. Just a reminder that this meeting is being live streamed on our Facebook page. First up, we have apologies from Councillor Bogue. If I could have a mover and seconder. Thank you, Councillor Crown and Councillor Brown. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Do we have any conflicts of interest? We have no public forum, no announcements by myself, any minor matters not on the agenda. Any announcements by management? Okay. Confirmation of the minutes of the meetings held on Thursday the 31st of October and Thursday the 7th of November. If I could have a mover and seconder. Thank you, Councillor Gregg, Councillor Price. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Okay, we'll crack straight into our agenda item, which is the adoption of the draft future development strategy. And I would invite Fleur and Paulina and Rachel up to present the paper, please. Welcome.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou. For those who may be watching online or in the gallery today, my name is Fleur Lincoln and I'm the Principal Policy Planner here at Napier City Council. I'm also the co-author of today's report. So the paper today recommends Council adopt the draft Napier Hastings Future Development Strategy for public notification and public consultation under the Special Consultative Procedure under Section 83 of the Local Government Act. The draft FDS provides a 30-year blueprint for growth for Napier and Hastings. It provides for a sufficient development capacity to meet expected demand within this timeframe for both residential and business land. This long-term strategic planning document is intended to achieve well-functioning urban environments in both existing and future urban environments, and to assist with the integration of planning decisions under the Resource Management Act with infrastructure planning and funding decisions. The draft FDS has been prepared alongside Napier's partner councils, the Hastings District Council and the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, and also in partnership with our post-settlement government entities, our PCGEs, Mana Ahuriri Trust, Maunga Haruru Tangetu Trust and Tamatea Pokai Whenua. The draft FDS has been in development since late 2022 and has had input from technical specialists, consultants and interested individuals, groups and stakeholders. The FDS Joint Committee, consisting of representatives from the partner councils and PSGEs, have provided direction, key decisions, and at times challenged the approach and recommendations of the Technical Advisory Group. The draft FDS contains those sites that have been identified as the most appropriate for future growth. A number of criteria were used in assessing these sites, including natural hazards, highly productive land, availability and capacity of infrastructure, proximity to employment nodes, recreation spaces and public transport, and proximity to existing urban environments. The inclusion of Ahuriri Station, a commercial redressed property included in the Mana Ahuriri Trust's deed of settlement, provides for the long-term development aspirations of Mana Ahuriri Trust and those they represent. All sites identified through this process are still required to demonstrate developability and the avoidance or mitigation of effects through future planning processes such as rezoning and resource consent. The recommendations before you today are detailed within pages 5 to 7 of my report, in the paper. And in summary include receiving the report titled Adoption of the Draft Napier-Hastings Future Development Strategy for public notification and consultation, receiving the Napier-Hastings Future Development Strategy Joint Committee resolutions from its committee meeting on the 23rd of October 2024, adopting after consideration of the Joint Committee meeting resolutions the draft Napier-Hastings Future Development Strategy attached as Attachment 1 and the summary of information attached as Attachment 2. Confirming or otherwise the Joint Committee's recommendations 2 and 3 to exclude Middle Road, those are the sites HN3A and HN3B, from the consultation draft. Notifying the draft FDS and summary of information for consultation under the special consultative procedure and call for submissions with an opportunity to hear these submissions. Approving an amendment to Section 6 of the Terms of Reference for the Napier-Hastings FDS Joint Committee to allow the committee to appoint an independent panel to consider and hear submissions. And finally, to note this independent panel will undertake its work in accordance with the special consultative procedure under Section 82 of the Local Government Act. I'd just like to note that the Hawke's Bay Regional Council considered the same recommendations at their meeting on the 13th of November, and they recommended to adopt the draft FDS with the exception of the Riverbend Road site, that's NC4B, which they resolved to exclude from the draft FDS. Hastings District Council are considering the adoption of the draft FDS along with all the other recommendations today and possibly right now. And the adoption of the draft FDS today would enable a draft to be notified to the public on the 23rd of November, giving the public the opportunity to have their say with submissions closing the 23rd of December of this year. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Fleur. I'll open up for questions. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Kia ora, team. Thank you very much, Fleur, for the paper. I have a number of questions through you, Mayor Wise. My first is, does adopting the draft FDF give it any regulatory weighting?
Not in terms of their RMA, but it's definitely a strategic document that gets into consideration in the future when you are assessing different applications or areas for rezoning, as we do now. Like we have an HPAT document, and sometimes it's referenced, but it doesn't have statutory weight.
So through you, Mayor Wise, just clarifying, the draft does not hold any regulatory weighting, only a final once
Yes.
adopted.
Yes.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Wise. My second question is, could you please run me through the makeup of the technical advisory group?
Sure, through you, Chair. So the Technical Advisory Group is made up of a number of officers from, technical officers from the 3 partner councils. They are typically planning, they sit within the planning teams, policy and strategic planning teams. There's also staff from Tamatea Pokai Whenua and Mana Ahuriri Trust. And then at times, as required, we then call upon the technical expertise from outside of that group to other officers within council and the like.
Thank you. So through you, Mayor Wise, could you confirm for me that the Technical Advisory Group did turn their mind to matters in considering their recommendations to the Joint Committee, matters that covered natural hazards, highly productive soils, stormwater modelling, including displacement calculations, storage pumping and infrastructure works?
Yes, I can confirm that. They had access to all information. And the recommendation that went before the Joint Committee was, I guess, unanimous in terms of recommending that to go forward.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Wise. That has foreshadowed, I think, my next question, which was the Technical Advisory Group unanimous in their site recommendations to the Joint Committee? And if not, where was the difference in site recommendations?
The draft that went before the Joint Committee on the 23rd of October was agreed to by all Joint Committee members.
Unanimously supported by the Technical Advisory Group?
Sorry, Technical Advisory, sorry, I may have said something then. Yes, from the Technical Advisory Group, they all agreed to what was put forward before the Joint Committee.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Wise. That is all my questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Opening up for further questions. Councillor Crown.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Just a question around the, you outlined that we're hearing or considering the draft FDS today, so is Hastings District Council, that Regional Council have already made a position or claimed a position in regards to specific sites coming out of the proposed plan that we see. What complexities does that add to the consultation of the draft if Hastings and Napier are to disagree with Regional Council today?
So it will come down to what we put into the statement of proposal that will go for consultation to the public, and the partner councils would look to amend that statement of proposal to reflect the decisions of each council so that the public are aware of what each council's decision has been around those sites.
Supplementary to that. So just confirming that if Napier and Hastings were to differ from Regional Council, that the sites that Regional Council have said that they do not support would still feature in the draft plan for consultation.
That's right. It would be noted in there that they have asked for that, or their decision would be for that to be removed. Yep.
Okay. So the primary purpose of the adoption today of the draft FDS is so that we can move into a public notification and consultation phase. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's correct. So this provides an opportunity for any community members who may have feedback or concerns or through the consultation process to actually engage with council and share those with us.
Correct.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Price.
In relation to, I guess, Riverbend Road and Aharu Station, do we know what alterations will be made to that land to make it suitable?
Yeah. Sure, I can speak to the Riverbend development site. So there's been a considerable amount of work, technical work that has occurred in order to a resource consent level, so much more detailed than what would typically be required for a strategy. And they have undertaken work in the area of infrastructure provision, understanding the capacity and needs, infrastructure needs for water, wastewater and stormwater, and as well as roading and other service provisions. They've looked at the amount of earthworks that are to be required and the geotechnical challenges of the site. And so the recommendations in all of those reports have come through, and it's clear as to what is in order to provide a developable site for that. So there's a lot of detail. If you have a specific question about a particular matter, I'm happy to answer that.
You didn't cover Aharu Farm, but what I'm looking at is public having access to information to know how that land will change, to consult on it. So if there's a major alteration that they don't know about, how can you consult on it?
So the decision before you is to go out to your community on the draft FDS, which is a high-level strategy of where you might grow into the areas. The detail of what would happen in particular sites to make them consentable, or even for a plan change under our district plan, would require a lot more detail for us to go through. And they're the steps that follow this. So you set the sort of strategic direction of where you're going to grow into your city first, and then those sites would have to go through those potentially two other processes before we would really fully understand what the offering is and what the full mitigation needs are, and that would be done through the structure planning of a plan change in the district plan or through a consenting pathway. In terms of Riverbend Road, I guess we know a little bit more about that because we've been working on that with the developer for some time, and so they've provided information at quite a detailed level already, even though we're dealing with it at a strategic level.
So,
Can I just take it a bit further?
I just wanted to summarise in terms of what you said about process. So the inclusion of a site in the final FDS, which is still probably close to 8 or 10 months away anyway, is still no guarantee that a site will be developed, because there is still other phases to go through to satisfy us, be that a district plan change or a resource consenting process, before we would be giving the green light for any development.
That's correct. There are regulatory pathways that have to be satisfied.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, because that clarified my point a bit.
Yeah.
I'm just saying someone mightn't consult on it and then find out that there's a 20-metre hole going to be dug. Then they don't know. So how can they, I guess what you're saying and what the Mayor said is there's another opportunity to consult on it. So yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Gregg, then Councillor Crown, then Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Wise. Just a technical question regarding Riverbend Road. Do you know how high you would have to raise the land to mitigate the flooding risk in that area? Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Yes, so the work that's been done on the earthworks requirements and the geotechnical has demonstrated that where the site sits the lowest, which is around the centre, looking at a fill height of around 1.5 metres, 1.5 to the edge of the site where it sits higher, and so obviously as it moves out there will be less height required.
Councillor Crown.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Gregg. My question flows on nicely. Obviously, we're quite concerned about the constituents in our ward in particular, being Nelson Park ward councillors. So we know that there is concern. Know what resource will be available for them to be able to sort of test their thoughts and feelings and understanding of the information that's available. Because we're quite technical at times. So how will they contact us, and who will they have available to them to help them through that?
Do you want to take the consultation?
Yeah, the consultation will be open for around a month, and there would be, we have our comms team here, maybe they can talk a little bit more about the comms plan, but the officers are available to answer questions through the consultation period if somebody wants to know a little bit more about the FDS.
Thank you, and I understand, is there a website or is there online information as well for
Yes,
people to...
all of that is provided, that's right.
Thank
Yes.
you. And so if residents wanted to call council, who would they ask for?
For the policy planning team, yes. But the information, you're right, is available on the website, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Taylor and then Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. We've been focusing a little bit on Riverbend Road, so I'd just like to focus for a second on Ahuriri Farm. And you've included it now, and you've mentioned the term redress land. So is the process for the development of that land going to follow a similar pathway to what you've outlined would be required for Riverbend Road?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Sorry, can I just add to that? So for Ahuriri Station, as you know, they're in the fast-track consent process that has been run by the central government. So Napier City Council would be a interested party to that process, but wouldn't be the decision maker of that process. That is, if they choose to take that consenting pathway, they may choose to take others.
So there will be a pathway that they need to follow.
Yes, there will need to. The district plan currently doesn't allow for what they'd like to develop in that area in terms of the zone plan. So that process would have to be done, and then they would have to go through a consenting pathway, whether that be the fast-track consent pathway or through Napier City Council and Hawke's Bay Regional Council pathway.
Thank you.
And just to add to that, Mana Ahuriri has also submitted to the proposed district plan in relation to Ahuriri Station, so there's another avenue there which is following a different process if the land was going to be rezoned anything different to what it currently is.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McGrath.
Yes. Just through the chair. Just looking for a little bit of perspective with regards to Councillor Gregg's question before about the land height of having to be, I think, 1.5 metres. How does that compare to our current subdivision, the stage we're doing now in Parklands? How high does that have to be raised? Just looking for perspective-wise.
It might not be a question that the policy team can answer, but Russell, if he might be able to speak to it, otherwise we could find that information out for you.
I could probably, talk loudly. The last, there we go. The last calculation on average was about 1.4 metres, but that, it generally, but if we want more specific data,
That's fine.
A similar amount.
Good question.
Councillor Simpson.
Through you, Madam Chair, a question around the objectives in the paper or in the document. I note in your report that a 12th objective was added partway through the process. Having added that objective, does that mean that the rest of the policy document, which is a high-level strategy document, was the rest of the document reviewed to ensure that all of the objectives were weighted equally across any of the assessments or judgments made within the document? And as that was added so late, does that run any risk of the any judicial review of the document?
Good question. Through you, Madam Chair. So you're referring to the values and aspirations of mana whenua for development are a priority and are recognised and supported?
Correct.
So the addition of that objective really speaks to, I guess, the recommendation from the TAG and also the recommendation from the Joint Committee to include the Ahuriri Station in the draft FDS, which was specifically around providing for the development aspirations of mana whenua.
And that relates directly to the fact that it was redress land.
Correct.
And so just to confirm, is that the only site that was put forward for assessment that is redress land?
I think we can confirm that's the only site in Napier. We're probably not as sure about any other sites that might have been put forward in Hastings.
In Hastings. So I guess that would confirm that that addition of the late objective is not going to affect any of the other sites that were assessed because none of them were redress land for Napier.
Thank you for that clarification.
I'll just let them finish chatting. Councillor Crystal.
Just sorry, can we just answer that question?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, so when the objective was added, the technical advisory group went back through the sites to make sure there was consistency with the sites that were put forward to meet that objective. and that was the case. There is another site which is a Mana Ahuriri Trust site in 7th Street, in the sort of Pandora industrial area, which has also been put forward and included in the FDS. Not under the same level of, it's not commercial redress, I guess, but so it's not exactly the same. But yes, that was also included in the FDS. It also met all the usual criteria.
Yeah, so just as briefly as you can, so all of the objectives have been weighted equally across the whole document, across the whole plan, or not?
When the new objective was put in, all the sites were revisited to ensure that they were considered against all of the objectives again. So yes.
And so we've reduced the risk of any...
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Crystal.
And just through the Mayor, just following on from Councillor Taylor, just to confirm that redress land has to go through the same processes as any of the other sites, and also that the fast-track development, I know you've said that it doesn't go through the council process, but it goes through the same rigorous hazards analysis process that any other site would go through?
That's correct. The future development strategy draft is really just giving consideration and acknowledgement that that land was provided as settlement land for uplifting the economic and aspirations of Ahuriri Station, Mana Ahuriri. And so it is at that level that we acknowledge that. But yes, any site still has to go through and meet certain criteria under our regulatory pathways that it is an appropriate site for development.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you very much, team. I'm interested just to understand if you could talk me through the complexity of some of next year's various policy instruments that we know are in train and how they relate and provide some uncertainty in this process.
You might need to help me out with this one. There is a number of things that are being under develop at the moment. So the future development strategy is one of them. You also have a national policy statement being developed by the government on hazards, and that will give councils clearer direction on how to treat land that is subject to natural hazard. That is likely to we will have a better idea of that at about the same time that you're considering the future development strategy for a final decision. There is also the district planning process that you're involved, that's before you at the moment, and that will also have a similar timeline, as well as the regional policy statement, which will be out for consultation by the Hawke's Bay Regional Council.
And just in addition to the national policy statement for hazards, there's a suite of resource management reform that's coming through, looking to be sort of finalised around the middle of next year as well, and that includes changes or new NPSs or NESs, if there's 14 of them. So right through from highly productive land national policy statement through to a new NPS for infrastructure. There's a whole suite of changes coming through in addition to changes to the actual Resource Management Act itself. A lot of complexity within this short amount of time.
And I guess what that means is that the Joint Committee and the Technical Advisory Group that have informed the Joint Committee are doing their best to make recommendations and consider the sites against the regulatory landscape or and the legal requirements that we have right now. But we do recognise that there is further guidance, further legislation that may converge on your decision for the future development strategy when it comes back after consultation.
Thank you. And just in that vein, and because we've had highly productive land mentioned, And noting that some of the sites in Hastings were recommended to be excluded because of them being highly productive land. For Napier, do we have any sites that could be considered highly productive, and are there any legislative requirements that we need to consider with relation to those sites?
Okay. Sure. So under the NPS for highly productive land, what that NPS or the restrictions for development on that relate to particular zoning, so it needs to already be zoned general residential or, general rural or rural productive. It also needs to be in land use capability category 1 to 3, and also not contained within an existing growth strategy. So when we look at all the sites that have been put forward for greenfield development, they are primarily included in an HPUDs, our existing growth strategy, or they're not LUC 1 to 3, or they're already zoned something other than general rural or rural productive. So when you look at all of our sites, then they fall outside of those.
Okay, thank you.
This is for Napier sites mainly.
Yes,
Napier
yeah,
site,
thank you. Councillor Brown.
Kia ora, through the chair. There's some people out there are saying things like we should learn from the past and not build on land that has natural hazards and is subject to flooding. Can you talk to the challenge that we face around having a legislative development requirement to actually still provide more land across the city?
Yes, you're correct. Sometimes this national direction can seem a little bit conflicting because we have an NPS that forces us to provide for growth and variety of growth across the city. And we know that Napier is very limited, is subject to a range of natural hazards. So what we have done through this exercise is find the areas that are that has the least, the most efficient and least exposed to natural hazard, and that can easily be mitigated. And we have put forward those ones to develop.
I suppose. And for the people who say we should only develop on good land, have we got any good land left in Napier to develop?
The one that we put forward in the FDS are the best land in terms of what the technical advisory group has assessed and taking into consideration all the criteria. Of course, certain sites perform better than others in relation to natural hazard only, and that's why you can have a debate that some areas might have been included, which is still subject to natural hazard, and that is a big consideration. But in general, under all the criteria used in the FDS, those were the best sites that were put forward.
Can I just add to that what we're talking about specifically there is greenfield, notwithstanding that our own intensification of land that's already developed and has infrastructure and mitigations in place is the best place to develop as well.
Any further questions? Councillor Price.
Sorry, I'm just getting back to the Arparuri Farm setup. The final approval is July next year, is that right? Will we know what's going to happen to be able to consult on that? I talked before about not knowing what you're consulting on. By July next year, will we know what's happening to the land? I'm talking about alterations to that land to make it suitable to build dwellings on in 8 months' time.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair. So what we're taken to today is a high-level strategy for growth. It doesn't go into the specifics about what exactly is going to go where, what kind of development it is, how high the ground level is, how they're going to provide for, detailed stormwater design, etc. This is really just looking at where are the best places for Napier and Hastings to grow into the future.
Yeah. And that will be the case for the adoption of the final FDS as well. The FDS is a high-level strategic document identifying potential sites for development, where you will look at the detail and the further consultation in terms of what specifically needs to be done to a site. That will be through a district plan change and a resource consent process, which will follow on further down the track, and it might be 10, 20, 30, 40 years away.
Okay, yeah, I'm just, bearing in mind I'm looking after my ward, and I just, I guess that's clarified again from the mayor again, but it just worries me that people are consulting on what they don't know what they're consulting on.
Yeah, and I guess as I commented earlier, inclusion in the FDS does not guarantee a site will be developed.
It does indicate where people are heading though.
It gives an indication.
Yeah, and I think Deputy Mayor Brosnan question probably doesn't hold any weight. You said at the start, what's the binding of it? Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, I'll just open for any general discussion. I have had a mover from Deputy Mayor Brosnan, but just open up for any general discussion should there be any. Okay, so mover Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Crown. I'll invite you to speak to that, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Wise. And first I'll say thank you to yourself and Councillor Crystals and members on the Joint Committee. I think what has played out in the last couple of days, I'm sure, is only indicative of what has played out around that table. So thank you for supporting that work stream. I know it has been an interesting one. I will speak in support of the officer's recommendation that we have in front of us today. I think, as is shown through the questioning that you've had just now, that there is national pressure to make land available for development under a national policy statement for urban development. And we have regionally worked together with this joint committee to satisfy that. To be frank, if the land was easy, it would have been developed already at some stage over the last 150 years. I'm sure there are small pockets, but as a general on the whole. Meaning, of course, in this process, we are only left with the hard-to-develop land, the complex infrastructure need land, and the controversial or conflicting priority land. Napier's set its strategic direction to go up, to intensify, to move to the hills, but this does not on its own satisfy the MPS requirements for us. The Joint Committee as a group called for expressions of interest and for ideas. This started with community input. Those were then assessed by experts, a technical advisory group. That group held considerable expertise, as has been outlined today and in the paper. Those experts were from our own councils, including the HBRC, our PSGEs, our partners, and technical expertise. They considered the risks and opportunities in these sites and recommended sites for inclusion and exclusion based on technical factors, not political factors. TAG unanimously supported the sites after considering natural hazards, highly productive soils, stormwater modelling, including the displacement calculations, the storage, the pumping, the infrastructure works, and I'm sure that list goes on and on. I'm no expert, and that is why I intend to rely on the experts' advice. I understand, and I truly do, why yesterday HBRC politicians went against their staff's advice. They needed to show a firm hand on flood-prone land post-Cyclone Gabrielle. And it is my view that the sites recommended are considered controversial in part. And that is why I'm interested in community feedback. I am basing my support for the staff's recommendation on the technical reasons, and I intend to be guided by their relevant expertise. I support the Joint Committee's recommendation today as a draft to seek that community feedback, and I am interested to see what the independent panel will make of all of that community feedback, which I'm sure will give alternate views to all of those controversial issues. This is by no means the end of the road. We know that by adopting this draft, we are not putting any additional regulation in front of, say, developers. This is no further along the pathway for those sites than it was yesterday. It's simply seeking community feedback. So thank you, Mayor Wise, and again to yourself and Councillor Crystal for representing Napier on that joint committee. I think you should be very proud of the position it has come to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. Councillor Crown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with everything that Deputy Mayor Brosnan has shared, but I just want to reiterate that this is actually a compulsory piece of work for us. And in my mind, there are some key takeaways here. As councils of TLAs, we take seriously our responsibility to be future focused around land use and how it enables our development commercially, socially and environmentally. And that this is just part of a suite of planning and regulatory instruments that interact to facilitate and manage growth. So these are the best places that our joint committee and technical experts recommend could be considered for development, which I think speaks to your point, Councillor Price. It doesn't mean that people will actually develop them. So for me, this is a gateway and it's a really important one. I think that the consultation of this draft document is our development and wider community's opportunity to voice their level of comfort around the risks and whether the planned use as we present it is the right use. So I speak in support.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Wise. In her usual very eloquent manner, the Deputy Mayor has summarised most of what I would like to say, and again, Councillor Crown. I had concerns, but I think the word pathway and the beginning of the road is the most important thing that we should focus on. This is really just the beginning after a lot of work's been done, and I'm quite satisfied that as it's the beginning of the pathway, there are a number of exit points if necessary, and there is no guarantee that any of these sites will be developed in the future if they don't meet other requirements. So putting this out for public consultation is the correct thing to do, and I'm sure that, as has been said, when the submissions are heard by an independent panel, there may be further changes, but I think it's the beginning of a pathway, and as has been said, it's a requirement that we look for future development of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. We have had 3 speak in support of the motion. Do we have anyone wishing to speak against? That being the case, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And I just want to take an opportunity to say thank you so very much to the 3 of you. I know this has been hours and hours and hours of work, both for yourselves and for other members of your team. It is much appreciated. I understand and I know there's been some challenges along the way which you have all navigated very professionally and have always provided sound advice, and just really want to acknowledge that. So thank you.
Thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, may I just ask for clarity? In terms of the recommendations, do we take all those in the positive, or would you like to go through, there are some confirmation points in there?
No, I believe we have actually voted in favour of all points of the resolution. I won't read it out because we'll be here for another 20 minutes. But yeah, no, confirming that yes. Okay. Thank you very much. So that brings our open meeting to a conclusion. Thank you, everybody. Could I have a mover and seconder to go into PX? Thank you, Councillor Mawson and Councillor Crystal. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And we will just have a very brief 2-minute break.